Yes, thank you. I got to say that I have been hearing about this topic for the better part of a couple of years, and I wish we were further along in the process. Given the time frame that we're at before the June 30th, the deadline, I think the extension is appropriate. But I would like to set a firm deadline for the evaluation. I think that a year is absolutely sufficient to take the look we need, particularly given the fact that we've been looking at many of these aspects for months and months and months. And if we do approve this today, I would hope that we would at least clarify that the time frame is one that we should aggressively pursue, and I think a year to get to the point of decision. With regard to the decision, I am not convinced that we can't do a good job of aggressively managing the contract, which would protect the interest of the taxpayer. I'm not saying that's the way that at the end of the process we should go. I'm just saying that that's an option that I think is worthy of serious discussion. RFP is a good process. It's not the only way to make sure that we get good value for the taxpayer. And particularly when you do have this admittedly arguable how much local authority we give up, but there is some modicum of the state has more involvement, more control once we go through that other process. I'm a guy that has seen how that works up there, and I just soon keep as much control here as we can. That certainly has to be part of the discussion too. But I will support the 3-year extension only on the premise that we get back to this board within a year with a complete evaluation of which way we should proceed. And at that point, we can, if necessary, exercise the 1-year option to move to an RFP, or we can aggressively manage the existing provider with contract negotiations that will ensure that we're getting the best possible value, both dollar-wise and safety-wise for our citizens.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Benoit. Bruce, I think we're done with you. Chief Hawkins, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, and then we'll open up for board discussion.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Mr. Orr, Ms. Walls, John Hawkins, Riverside County Fire Chief. An honor to be here, and thank you for remembering me and the opportunity to speak. And I stepped up and got the speaker's form and probably should have sat down on my fat butt and waited, but thank you.
No worries. John, you know, we're talking about 3-year contract. It sounds to me if we do a 3-year contract, we still have 4 years because you have a 1-year termination.
Yes, right? Yes, I believe you are correct, Supervisor Tavaglione. I just have some about 5 short bullets to share with you, and then I'd like to just quickly answer some questions. We provide first due EMS throughout the county, and we depend on a competent ambulance transport agency. AMR has proven to be that competent transport agency. I don't hear any question today, and I've listened very intently to the quality or the competency of performance. I support a 5-year extension of this agreement, and I support that for some valued reasons, and I'd like to quickly go into that. We don't know of a better process than what's being proposed by the Form 11. I mean, frankly, the Form 11 looks at the 2 major components, which is an extension, and it looks to an analysis. And frankly, that's a good process. I think Supervisor Benoit's comments of moments ago of providing a quick evaluation and a comeback to the board is a really good suggestion, and I heard that very clearly. We value our stakeholder input and would welcome being part of any analysis. As directed earlier by the Board of Supervisors, we are working with AMR on a Riverside County support cost model that would help us fund the cost of monitor defibrillators, supplies, etc. And AMR has been responsible to that, but they have some business decisions they have to make when we look at monitors and on what period of time can they depreciate and react to the monitors and replace. The monitors are not cheap. They're $17,000 to $22,000 per unit, and we have 122 of them countywide. So it's a huge consideration, and I understand all sides of this, but also understand the business model side. Again, this is about what's best for the patient. I heard a comment earlier, and I thought it's, this has unfortunately become somewhat of a very antagonized process, and that's unfortunate. I heard a comment earlier, someone said, I don't know if we need to have paramedics respond to a possible constipation. You know, as a paramedic, and you go out there, you may have what's called a AAA, which is an acute abdominal aorta, or aneurysm, aortic aneurysm. And that person could be bleeding out. Or it could be someone suffering from an anaphylactic reaction. And there are a lot of reasons for pre-hospital medical emergencies, and those are my short points.
John, I appreciate you coming up. You answered some of the questions I have, and I'm just going to kind of make my comments. My thoughts on the system, not only watching the system here for 18 years on the board, but also at the City of Riverside, working in law enforcement and working side by side, AMR and paramedics, or excuse me, firefighters. I would never even consider going out to bid for our CDF firefighters here in Riverside County right now. I mean, they're the best of the best in my opinion. Same with Riverside, City, Corona. I think all our firefighting agencies are good, but there are, as we all know, private sector fire companies now that would love to have some of the city's businesses. And I bet you they're talking to some of our cities that are having challenges. The way it's been described, a 3-year extension, as I mentioned a moment ago, sounds to me like a 4-year extension. I'm not the legal mind here, but they do have a 365-day termination, so it's really 4 years. San Bernardino County went out for bid. I'm looking at a 4-year timeline for their process. You know, I've seen AMR in service. They've responded to my family. I've got a huge family, ladies and gentlemen. I've had many instances over the years where AMR, CDF, Riverside Fire have responded, and they get the job done and they save lives. And you know, I may be the only one on this dais, but I can support a 5-year agreement. In saying that, I will always be a proponent of ongoing, continuous evaluation of the system, performance evaluation. And if whatever the term is, if we don't have performance evaluations in there, then they don't get renewed.
And when we have that commitment to the EMS agency we're working with right now, we want our response data to be public just as well as the private enterprise that provides transportation. We agree with that transparency. And on a couple more thoughts, we do have CAD-to-CAD digital transmission right now of data. When our dispatchers take a secondary PSAP call for a medical emergency, the computer automatically queries the location and it sends the digital transmission to AMR, and that happens. And that was because of, as was earlier mentioned by Mr. McAtee, a public-private agreement to the tune of $70,000. We are also implementing EMD. We are training our dispatchers today, and Supervisor Buster had that correct on the terms. That's called triaging and pre-arrival instructions, and we're working to implement that very quickly now.
Okay, thank you, Chief Hawkins. Supervisor Stone, then Supervisor Buster.
No, John, what you're describing here is what we all want, I think. We ought to be more explicit. We want a cooperative, supportive relationship that optimizes our resources between our valuable fire services and all that they need and how they overlap with, and they're an integral part of the emergency medical system here, that the ambulance is key for in many aspects. So you see that cooperative relationship continuing, even though there are necessary changes that have to be made now.
Absolutely, and I believe that all parties want to make the successful changes as evidenced by the recent CAD-to-CAD digital transmission of data. I think that's a significant step forward. And we believe that's reduced by 1 minute the arrival time for a paramedic ambulance.
Chief, thank you for your comments, and I'm going to quote you. You said a few minutes ago that we don't know of a better process than the process that we have with ambulance service in the county. And my question to you is, because we have not explored another provider in 30 years, how do we know that there's not a better process out there?
I believe I would characterize that, Supervisor Stone, by the process in the Form 11 versus who the competitors might be. That's, I see as different than the process. I think the process of extending and then evaluating is what I was referring.
Okay. You also said something that I agree with you wholeheartedly, that we must do what's in the best interest of the patient. We heard from Bruce Barton that we're certainly not at the top of what our ambulance providers charge for their service. We also understand that our ambulance provider probably provides about 48% of their trips as uncompensated because of our growing indigent population. So I certainly would be in support of increasing that fee, with the caveat that we've invested significantly in paramedic services in this county on our fire engines. I think the 3rd District was the first to have a paramedic on every engine. And we basically, when we get to the scene before an AMR ambulance does, I think we get reimbursed $15 roughly, or less than that, for the supplies that we use. And we work with AMR, and I appreciate that in helping get our supplies at a less expensive price. However, there are a lot of jurisdictions, just like the county, that want to be at the forefront of delivering better services at a time when we know monetarily it's very, very challenging to do. I know that my friends in the city of Hemet would love to have paramedics on all their engines, but the economics dictate otherwise. But if we could come up with a better model and increase the fee that AMR can collect and have some type of a cooperative agreement where if County Fire with paramedics, or the City of Marietta or City of Hemet that have their own fire departments that want to invest in paramedic service can get to that scene and save somebody's life, then why shouldn't that model be moved forward in an attempt to get there earlier, faster, and save somebody's life? You and I both know, I'm a health professional, I know that 1 minute can make the difference between somebody living and somebody dying. But for me, and I think AMR has done a great job, and I'm not going to give my final comments now. I've always learned in the private sector that competition makes you sharper. And we can always improve in our fire department, our sheriff's department, our district attorney's department, the board of supervisors, the executive office. There's always room for improvement. But if I'm Joe Citizen sitting at home and I'm watching this, and you're at the age that I am now, 56 years old, where things start to go wrong.
Excuse me, sir, 65.
Yes. I want to make sure that my wife, or when they push that 911 button, that somebody's going to get there in time to help me out of the emergency that I'm facing. And I think the citizens want to see that we're doing our best to ensure that we have a provider that is there to provide that service. And I'm not saying it's not AMR, but sometimes you have to go through that transparent exercise so that the citizens have the confidence that we've done what we're elected to do and make sure, quoting you again, that we're doing what's in the best interest of the patient.
Couldn't agree more.
Okay, I see no further comments by members of the board, so that concludes our speakers, our public speakers. My apologies, I'm trying to keep track of all this. Personally, I think the system is good. I think we should continue to enhance it. If you go to a 5-year agreement, it does provide for those enhancements to the tune of I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of dollars. Excuse me. How much, John? If you go with a 5-year agreement.
The enhancements would help County Fire to the tune of over $1 million.
Over $1 million.
Yes.
Okay. The emergency medical dispatch is included as part of that, as I understand it, included replacement.
No, that actually, excuse me.
The $1 million includes the cost of the monitor defibrillators and EMS supply replenishment or replacement. There is the potential also for housing AMR ambulances in some of the stations, but that's less resolved at this point. It does not include anything with EMD.
Okay. All right. So I'm prepared to make a motion on a 5-year agreement. Before doing that, I'd like to hear further comments by members of the board. Supervisor Stone.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, again, I want to say that I believe that AMR has been well served, has served this county well over the past 30 years. And I've had a very responsive relationship with Peter Hubbard, who I think has been an outstanding representative for AMR. We have to recognize that we have a growing number of indigent and uninsured patients that are being transferred to the hospitals, and again, we need to factor that into the fee, which I think we should at least send the message to Bruce Barton and our staff that that fee needs to be reevaluated for making sure that the business model will compensate for uncompensated care and look into the possibility of raising the fees so that those municipalities that invest in paramedics can get some form of reimbursement so that they can continue that service they're struggling to provide. We also have an aging population, and we still are the fastest growing county in the state of California. We also potentially are going to be faced with a national health care plan, commonly known as Obamacare, beginning in 2014, which will change the way medical providers are paid virtually, ensuring that every transport will be compensated, although a lower fee may be authorized by the federal government that are really dictating that process. Our county over the past 30 years has grown to be the fastest growing county at one time in the state of California, the second fastest in the country. And we are a large, geographically challenged county, which makes somebody that potentially would bid on this contract really have to face some large challenges. That's not to say that those challenges couldn't be met. But the challenges that I face in my district are in the mountain communities of Idlewild and Pine Cove, where the ambulance provider to Pine Cove Idlewild Fire has chosen not to provide that service effective July the 1st. And so I want to ensure that whatever we do today, and I've got the assurances from our fire chief, that we will make sure that the folks on the Hill will see no interruption in service. But I also know that in the 4th District, my esteemed friend Supervisor Benoit has a lot of areas that have some challenging areas in which they need to be served as well. So again, a big county, and we also have a new $150 million communication system that's going to be coming online here very shortly that I know is also going to help with the dispatch of ambulances countywide, hopefully through some enhanced policies. I'll remind the board that we did endorse the BRUDE policy, bid review in a transparent environment, which made the bid processing for larger projects, namely those greater than $100,000, more transparent and fair. The dollars over the next 10 years are huge. We're looking at $1 billion in gross revenue, and that is a significant amount of money. I appreciate the $1 million that has been dedicated to the services that our chief just articulated. If we extend the contract over 5 years, we're looking at a $500 million contract. My cities in my district have been non-wavering in their desire to see this contract to go out to bid. And their concerns have been, number one, having a reimbursement formula that allows them to recover their investment in equipment and personnel. Again, municipal paramedics, when they may get to the scene before the ambulance provider. And as cities like the county, continue to struggle during these very challenging economic times, they must have a better way of cost recovery for their investments, or we will see their service levels significantly reduced. And of course, our goal, I'm sure unanimously on this board, is that we want to reduce response times. And we certainly don't want to lose local control over EMS services. And I don't believe that we will if we go out to bid. I don't have a problem in sharing our EMS plan with the state of California and having a third party look to make sure that we're following all state laws and we are providing all the enhancements that the state agency is chartered to oversee and ensure that we follow. Because of a county of our size, it would require one large or multiple providers servicing our county, which I said before, will be a challenge. And I would say that AMR would certainly be the horse in the running that would potentially be the best suitor for that job. But as I said before, coming from the private sector, I've always believed that competition is good. It would always yield the best services and the lowest price and the most affordable fees for our constituents. So it's for these reasons that I support an extension of the existing contract for no more than a 3-year period. I would recommend that we remove the deleted portion of paragraph 4.2 for it reads, each party's intent not to renew shall be given by written notice at least 12 months, 365 days prior to contract expiration. I believe that we should hire a consultant promptly to evaluate our present EMS structure, including those stakeholders that wish to be included. We should let out the RFP for a consultant no later than August of 2012. And we should pick the most qualified consultant no later than September the 4th, 2012. We should require that the consultant to work with the stakeholders, and I believe we should consider as stakeholders one member from each city, our fire chief, each member or representative of the Board of Supervisors, our EMS director, and a representative of the Executive Office, and deliver an EMS plan that can be ready to go, out to bid, no later than March 3rd of 2014. That is 1.5 years to get the job done. I don't believe it needs 2 years to get the job done. The Board of Supervisors can then have a public hearing no later than June the 1st, 2014 to choose a provider or providers for ambulance services. Actually, it's 2015. To choose a provider or providers for ambulance services to begin June 1st of 2015. If AMR is chosen, a new contract can be written reflecting the RFP details and enhancements. If AMR is not chosen, AMR will be given 12 months notice in accordance with the amended contract to terminate their contract and allow the new provider to have 12 months, which I think is necessary to build the necessary infrastructure to deliver county services countywide. So if I can have this put up on the Elmo as just articulating the dates that I proposed, the timelines, it will position this county to ensure that we have the best EMS system, and will give the board full discretion to either continue the contract with AMR based on the RFP, amend that contract, or go with a new service provider if one comes forward that can provide a better service than our present provider. I'll make that motion if somebody would like a second for discussion, and the timeline is up on the
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second? Okay, Supervisor, Mr. Second, the motion for purpose of discussion.
Supervisor Stone, to continue with our goal of putting the patient first on the committee that's dealing with this, I want to make sure that we have a medical, competent medical viewpoint, perhaps our emergency room physicians here county hospital or others that are familiar with this area would be appropriate. Is that okay with you?
Very good.
Okay, as mentioned, I just think the system as it's structured is working very effectively and efficiently. I think this is being spearheaded by a few city fire departments that are hoping to gain some additional, in fact I know it's being spearheaded by a few city fire departments that are hoping to gain something back in return so that they can increase the staffing with their own fire agencies and putting the care of the patient, the safety of the patient second in terms of their own goodwill, or excuse me, benefit. And so I cannot support anything other than a 5-year with performance standards attached to each year, and if they didn't reach those performance standards, then we give them a 1-year wind down. We do that basically with our, I even hate to use this as a comparison, our trash companies, but so that I cannot support the motion. Supervisor Ashley.
Okay, I'm sort of in between on this, it looks like. I'll just give you some of my thoughts. You know, the EMD, that's Emergency Medical Dispatch, and other enhancements are needed to protect and literally save the lives of our population. The fire chief strongly agrees on this. This is a significant financial investment. These EMWD and other enhancements require 5 years for the cost to be recovered. If we get what they are, they're the emergency medical dispatch where the contractor agrees to work with the agency to develop and execute a program that ensures the services are available countywide, regardless of municipal border. These services allow national protocol, so follow our national protocol and have an approved CQI program, and it takes about 2 years to accomplish this. Also, they have to integrate, whoever comes in, they're going to have to integrate into a new countywide UHF radio system. That takes 2 years, about 2 years. You got state-of-the-art clinical equipment, like they're upgrading their cardiac monitors to state-of-the-art and to minimize the life cycle at 5 years. They're completing the transition to pro-power gurneys. This reduces medical injuries and enhances patient safety. That's about a year to do that. They implement the clinical research studies and develop local solutions. That's fund and participate in clinical research studies on patient outcomes from acute disease, such as sudden cardiac arrest, STEMI, and stroke. They work with the county public health to study and mitigate chronic disease in the county, particularly in underserved areas, diseases such as asthma, hypertension, and diabetes. The estimated plan on that is to start immediately and ongoing. And to develop innovative service strategies to work within the county healthcare system to meld EMS into the bigger healthcare system in order to have response to emerging reforms. And they engage in developing strategies that measure quality, reduce cost, and lessen the load on the system, improve the health of the community. That's started immediately, it's ongoing. That's why AMR is looking for protection. These enhancements require 5 years for the cost to be recovered. And that's why AMR is asking for this 5-year plan for protection and certainty. If we don't adopt a 5-year contract, that's why the new provider, if any, must pay AMR for the amortized portion of these vital enhancements if a transition occurred in less than 5 years. So there ought to be some reimbursement procedure in there for that. It's like you go through this process, and in 3 years from now or something, there's still going to be some of these costs are going to be stranded, and AMR shouldn't be stuck for those. Okay, so that should be in there. If that's in there, great. Another thing is AMR has been, and I want to talk a little bit about offensive AMR here for now. AMR has been and is a sterling ambulance service provider. We don't want to play Russian roulette with our lives by rushing to the net on this process. I doubt that this evaluation can be accomplished in 1 year. Nevertheless, this contract should go through careful evaluation, system review, and possible bidding process without undue delay. So I think you have to provide for, I think, a couple of 1-year extensions. This is a very complex process and needs some state approvals. It's not going to happen like lickety split like everybody's pointing out. It's going to take a little longer, I think. So whatever it is, we have to, I think, make sure Supervisor, I think, your motion would allow that this takes longer than you think. What do we do? It's likely to. And it'd be very hard to get this done in a year. No one else has been able to do this.
Mr. Chair, if I can, thank you, Supervisor Ashley. Your points are very well taken. Back on the Elmo again, I did have one date that was incorrect. Let's just review it one more time. August 1st, 2012, let out the RFP for a consultant to work on a contemporary Riverside County EMS plan. Number 2, by September the 4th, 2012, award a contract for the EMS plan to the most qualified applicant. 3, March 3rd, 2014, so that gives a year and a half for us to put the plan together, submit it to the state, consider and approve a final EMS plan that can be ready to go out to bid. 6/1 of 2014, the Board of Supervisors will have a public hearing to choose a provider or providers for countywide ambulance services. And then the new contract will begin on 7/1 of 2015, 1 year and a month later, to ensure that if there is a new provider, that the infrastructure will be in place. If it is AMR, there'll be no discontinuation in their infrastructure. Certain enhancements may in fact happen, but I think that this board at any time can come together if we look like we're running out of time and mutually agree with the present provider to extend the contract if it looks like we're not meeting our deadlines. But one thing I've learned about government is it works slow unless you give it a good swift kick in the pants. And I think this is an important enough issue where I think we can meet the deadlines. And AMR, again, is a great company. They may be the victor in this in the end, but I think they'll be better as a company, and I think we'll be better in delivering health services for our constituents that depend on us to make the right decisions for them.
I want to make sure that, that we're not rushing the net and we have a lob over our head. It's a contract that doesn't pan out. And that has happened in other places. So I want to be very careful, move with undue delay. And undue delay means you're moving carefully. And let's do everything right. And we have the state, let's review this. There's all kinds of things. I predict now it's going to take longer than the schedule. But let's just make sure, let's build in for those delays. Let's allow for them. The process, just saying, well, we didn't make it. Why don't we do it? Well, we're not going to make it. We need to extend this 6 months. I'm going to have something built in by the year, built in that's more certain than that. And also make sure they're getting paid back. And if they end up, you don't get the contract out there 3, 4, 5 years from now, whenever it is, that they're paid back for their stranded cost and going ahead in good faith with this emergency dispatch system and these other enhancements.
Yeah, can that be included, either reimbursement or even better still, these enhancements can be put in within the 3-year period. They ought to go forward and do that and either adjust their rates or offer them some advance payment for the unamortized portion of that. As I see it, if here with just a few improvements, you can reduce the response time already an average of 1 minute. We should not delay any further obvious necessary improvements. Question?
I'll amend the motion, if that's all right. I'll amend the motion that, number 1, we follow the timetable that's there, and if we deviate from that timetable, it automatically gets agendized to the Board of Supervisors for an extension. And that if the contract should be terminated within the depreciation period for the investment that AMR is making, that our treasurer, auditor, controller, analyst will look at the investment made and we'll have a buyout provision for that equipment to make them whole. I don't have a problem with
All right, Supervisor Benoit, then I'd like to call Mr. McEntee back up. Question after Supervisor Benoit makes comments.
Thank you. The proposal, as I saw it on the board a minute ago, and it's gone again, but the second bullet talks about eliminating paragraph 4. Is that in the existing AMR contract? And if it is, can...
Chairman and Supervisor Benoit, under the amendment, that strike through is included.
And so your proposal would reinstate that? Okay, so we technically and legally we can make that a part of the motion and it is effective?
Yeah, the way it reads now under 4.2, they've proposed striking through the notice, the 12-month notice, and that the amended contract will continue until June 30th, 2015. So that is part of the existing amendment.
May I provide some clarification, Sarah Mack, Deputy Director? That strikeout currently applies to, since this would be the final extension, it applies to any extension. In the contract itself, there still is the term, as well as, I believe it is section 4.5, that still retains the 365-day, 12-month termination clause for the contract. That there were no other extensions after this, is my understanding why that was a strike-through.
In government law, in government code, don't we have a requirement, Pam, for an annual termination notice on any contract?
It retains it.
Any contract.
It is still in that contract, yes.
So any way we look at it, even with Supervisor, if I'm following Supervisor Stone's motion, it's 4 years.
No, it is a 3-year term.
But you give the 3 years at the end of the third year. Excuse me, you give the 12-year wind down at the end of the third year. Or do you give the notice at the end of the second year? Correct. That's the way any contract is, correct? Neil, you've been summoned. Mr. Kipnis, Neil Kipnis.
I was grabbing the paperwork, so what's the exact question? Sorry. Neil Kipnis, Deputy Community Council.
Oh, well, I'm going to let Pam ask.
They mentioned in the original contract, there's a requirement to give a 365-day notice, and that the extension language strike-through of 4.20 only applies to the extension.
That's what I was double checking. I believe it's in the original agreement also. If you can give me just 1 second, so I'll make sure to give you an accurate answer. Because that was carried over from the last amendment, so I think that was the intention, is to just pull that out of the last amendment. Yeah, under section 4.5 of the original agreement, it says that either party may terminate upon 365 days notice.